Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing Fatal Intrusion, written by Jeffery Deaver and Isabella Maldonado. It's a thriller, and it's the first book in a new series to feature two protagonists, Carmen Sanchez and Jake Herron. Now, out of the two protagonists, I did prefer Jake Herron in this book. I'm not sure what's happening in future books in the series, but in this book, Jake was more engaging for me, more relatable. But this book, I thought it'd be great because I really enjoy Jeffery Deaver as an author. I adore so many of his books, and what I like about him as an author is in many series he writes, or many books he writes, he tries different things. And things he tries is sometimes inventive, they're very different, and I don't see a lot of authors trying the things he tries in books. But in this book, he tries a techno thriller. And I quite enjoyed that, but doesn't go deep enough, not detailed enough from my point of view, but understand why. I don't know really anything about the other author, Isabella Maldonado. I've not read any of her books, but I plan to read some of her books in the future just to see how she writes in her own books as a solo author. And I have to say, the start of this book, the first couple of chapters, I struggled with. I didn't engage with them, wasn't hooked into those chapters. It took me a while to get into this book, and it took me until Jake Herron, our second protagonist, was in the story. I found his character relatable and engaging immediately. And it's because he brought with him the techno thriller vibe into the story, and I found that part of the book very enjoyable, very engaging. I wanted that to go deeper actually. I wanted more detail about that. I understand why it doesn't. In that kind of thing, a lot of detail when it's not really a heavy techno thriller. This is more like a normal crime thriller with a techno thriller aspect to it. If it was a heavy techno thriller, we'd have more detail, but maybe the pace would suffer. So this book is more like a general fiction thriller. So I get why the techno thriller aspects are more high level. Understand that, but I was disappointed by it. I wanted more detail around that because that sort of thing really intrigued me in this book. With protagonist Carmen Sanchez, I don't dislike her character. I just couldn't really relate with the character. I was struggling with that. I think it's because the authors are making her, this badass character, this character that's super tough. This character doesn't take any, crap from anybody. And I just kind of found that was overdone in some ways in this book. And I think sometimes too much is too much. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes too much is good enough. But in this book, too much with her was too much. The only reason I can think of to have a male and female duo in this series is because I think the authors are planning to bring in the element of will they, won't they. There's little hints of that in this book, just tiny hints. But I suspect maybe as early as the next book in the series, being book 2, we'll have a will they, won't they moment. I've got a feeling that's going to be a repeating theme in this series if this series goes on and on for future books. There is history with the two characters. So Sanchez is an agent in law enforcement, and Jake Herron was a hacker in a previous life, and now he works for a university. When he was a hacker, Carmen Sanchez busted him, arrested him. That's their history. She kind of feels sorry for that in some ways, and she helped to ease his punishment or the severity of his crime in certain ways. And because of that, she figures that he owes her one. And that's the reason in this book that she reaches out to him for help, because they find something early on with this crime they need help with from someone who's a bit of a tech whiz. And the first person in her mind is Jake Herron. So that's the reason I think why we have this male and female duo in these books. Apart from them in the books, we have point of view chapters from the culprit, from the villain. And his name is Spider. No, not a spoiler. We get told that very early on in this book. I think chapter 1 or 2, we're told that. As villains go, he's okay, but he's not super engaging. He's not super sinister. He feels a bit inept in some ways. In some ways he feels super clever. There is a cat and mouse element going on in this book, but it felt interrupted by the overall structure of the story. It felt interrupted by the pacing, because the pacing in this book felt all over the place. There were moments where I needed a fast pace and it slowed down. there are moments where we need a slower pace to kind of settle into certain things in the story, and it skips it and speeds up. It jumbles around sometimes with the chapters as well. So the pacing overall did impact my read of this book, and it impacted that cat and mouse element in the story, which is a shame because the reason we're told about the culprit early on, the reason we know as readers who the culprit is because the authors are banking on that cat and mouse thing in the book to be just super engaging and well done. And it wasn't, because of that interruption, because of flow in the story, because of pacing, and that just impacted my overall read and enjoyment of this book. Love this book, especially with Jake Heron, about the hacking and tech side of the story, that side of the mystery, is about intrusion theory. That character Jake, he bangs on about intrusion theory all the time in the book. It's repetitive, it's done to death really in the story. In this book, the way it's spoken about, it feels more like pseudoscience than real hard science, and I had an issue with that. Sometimes in his books, I've read other books by Jeffery Deaver, where he takes certain concepts and he writes it in a way that they come across like hard science, like pure science, but they're not. They're more pseudoscience. And it felt like that in this book with Jake and this intrusion theory. I mean, this book is fiction, and it's not trying to be a non-fiction book. It's not trying to be super detailed in fact. The fiction, it's got to be an exciting story. So the way intrusion theory is explained in this book makes it sound exciting and super engaging, and it ties in to what the mystery and the crimes are about, so I get it. I just wish sometimes that it didn't feel so pseudoscience-y in the way it's explained and portrayed in this story. I put all that aside and we have a thriller, a techno-style thriller that could be more engaging if it flowed better, more engaging if the pacing was better, and I guess more engaging to me if that Carmen Sanchez character was a bit more relatable. Stop trying to make her, super tough, super strong. I mean, I get she's tough and strong already because she has to be. She's in that law enforcement position. She has to be tough and strong to be there in the first place. It just seems like they're trying to make her this super, super tough and strong character because they feel like they have to. And Jake Heron as a character just felt more balanced. He suited what he's meant to be in the story more than Carmen Sanchez did. Jake for me is the best as the two protagonists. He's better balanced. I like the hacker angle. I like that he plays outside the rules to try to solve the crime. That was good in the story, made him more engaging. It meant sometimes that playing outside the rules could hurt the investigation, but he still did it. And I like that aspect because it created a little bit of tension sometimes between him and Sanchez as well in the story. So overall, interesting character, and I'm wondering what he'll bring to future books in this series. Sanchez for me, I struggled with. It's all that kick-ass character with her. I mean, it was too overdone, too forced. Sometimes I think it works. Sometimes it doesn't. It just happened that in this book, it didn't work so much for me. Maybe because there's two protagonists and I can compare both of them to each other. Maybe if it was just Sanchez alone, it'd be different. Maybe it'd work. But with two characters, when you have one that's very balanced and one like this, I don't know, that comparison just pushes Sanchez down the chain for me in engagement and enjoyment levels. Spider is our villain in the story. Not a spoiler, you find that out straight away in the story. But the way he's written, is he too clever or too lucky? Or maybe he is. I think there's a lot of coincidence and a lot of luck in his storyline. Maybe too much. Maybe that's a bit lazy the way it's done in the story. But as characters go, as villains go, he's not super engaging. He's not the best villain I've seen by Jeffery Deaver. And kind of a shame, I think, because with a story like this, I think this character Spider could have been so much more. Overall, I enjoyed the story. I like the techno-thriller aspect. The villain, I think, is engaging enough. He's not the best villain I've ever read, but there are parts to his storyline that are engaging. Even though he's so lucky and there's so much coincidence in what he does, I think there are certain moments that make you wonder, what next? What's going to happen next? And that drives the plot along, I think, very carefully in the story. I do think, though, there are some parts of the structure that made me struggle with the book. So there are some parts that are not balanced right. The pacing's not right. I didn't really engage with Sanchez, one of our protagonists, very much. I think she was not balanced very well in the story. But overall, it's still enjoyable, and I rate it a 3 out of 5. I'm wondering what's going to happen in future books in this series, because I think we have a male-female duo primarily because there's going to be a will they won't they moment sometime in the series, and I predict it's going to happen in the next book. We'll see. On my channel I review many thrillers. If you enjoy thrillers, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link on the video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.